Well, welcome back to the party line as we are heading in to the holidays. And we're day after Halloween, and I was watching the news this morning, Kyle, and they were talking about the Neiman Marcus Christmas catalog. They're talking about Christmas. It's the day after Halloween. We're already talking about the holidays, and of course, I think the holiday knitting season is upon us. And I'm really glad that you're here for your first visit to talk about this book that has really, really gorgeous like accessories that are inspired by architecture, which is one of my favorite inspirations. And people would be really lucky to get any of these as a gift.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah, welcome and thanks for getting up early on the West Coast to join me on the party line and to give us a personal tour of your books. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
sure. Hello.
Yeah. So now, Kyle, this is your first visit. So tell us how you got started. I think we've had it several male crochet designers on the party line, but fewer um, men knitwear designers,
Hmm.
and especially men who design knitwear for women, which I think is like a whole different ballgame than men who design sweaters for men. So tell me how you got started with this.
How I started to knit.
Yeah, who
I
taught you?
I grew up in a family with people who sort of crafting was just something that was part of the world, and it wasn't like the Martha Stewart type of crafting where everything was sort of planned and laid out and as part of its own event. It was more, my mom would be watching television and she would be crocheting, or my grandmother did a lot of sewing. One of the things I remember her doing was repairing uniforms for Kentucky Fried Chicken. So he would get the brown uniforms and would, figure out ways to patch or repair or save the material and save the what they were doing, because all that stuff was really, it was expensive back, I guess, when KFC had Kentucky Fried Chicken as a name, one, and two,
Back in the old
uniforms.
days, yeah.
Back in the so anyway, I was always around people trying to figuring out ways to solve problems that were presented to them in creative ways. So my grandmother did it by, making rag quilts, and she would give them to the nursing home. And my mom would, crochet following patterns more traditionally. But I looked at it and I tried when I was a kid to do stuff with, either knitting or crochet, mostly I think crochet. And I was more distracted than anything. I just didn't think I could do it. So, grew up watching that, and my mom did also cross stitch and stuff, like very intricate things. And I looked at them and thought, nope, I can't do that. That's too hard. When in reality, it took more time than I was willing to allow myself as a growing kid. So anyway, fast forward to, I don't know, about 2003 or so. I was living in Hollywood with a friend. I was homesick one day, and we were watching daytime television,
Oh,
and she was knitting. And in 2003, it was fun fur and novelty yarn. And
oh
she,
yeah,
yeah,
sparkly
so
especially.
and so she was doing these striped scarves where she would knit a few random rows of um, one color and then change to another and then whatever. And I was watching her do this, and I'm, with my cold or flu or whatever I had, and I was like, you know what? That looks complicated. That looks um, boring. Looks tedious. And she was like, no, it's relaxing. You should give it a try. You're creative. And, growing up, I drew and I painted and did ceramics and a bunch of other stuff. And I thought, why not? Like, what else am I doing? I'm sitting here watching, you know, Oprah or whatever we were watching. So she cast on for me and taught me the knit stitch, and I worked my hardest to keep those same, 20 stitches on my needle, and it would grow and shrink this thing that I was making, as it does. And I went through an entire big skein of yarn in that afternoon, and by the end, I was more consistent in my count when I was done with my row, and I decided, okay, I think I've got this. So now I want my own yarn. Like I want yarn that I chose. I want my needles. I wanted to own the stuff that was going to make the thing I was going to make. So off we went to a yarn shop and we picked out some yarn. I think it was Monos. It was Monos. Um, and my needles, I don't know, size 11 or 13. 13s, I think they were. And I was like, okay, these are the needles I'm always going to use. I'm never going to, like, this is as small as it's ever going to be for me. And
Yeah, famous last
this is
word.
it, right?
Yeah.
So I did garter stitch for years, probably 3 years. Probably, yeah, about 3 years of just garter stitch. And I did sort of the same thing. I was um, following her beginnings. I would collect yarns that were all green, fun for sparkly and whatever, and throw them all in a basket. And then I would just do random striped blankets or scarves, anything that was rectangular because I didn't know how to read a pattern.
And green.
And green or purple or pink or whatever. So I would just collect them by color collections and just do stuff all in one color mostly. And then I moved to the very, very north part of Los Angeles County and started going to a shop called Bishop's, which is no longer there. And there was a lady there, and I started to hang out there. So that was kind of the first knitting group that I went to. And while I was there, this woman Terry was like, Kyle, there are these things called patterns. If you're that you could follow and you could make, something other than a blanket, like how many blankets do you need and all of this. So I said, okay, fine. So I started making a sweater, and she guided me through, like, this is an increase and this is why one increase is better than the other, and just sort of um, gave me a taste of what all of that stuff meant. So that's how I started to understand what patterns were. And then, of course, the blog thing was happening, and everyone was, doing their blogs. And um, there's a thing called the men's knitting retreats, which are happening still, and they happen all over the country and really all over the world. And they're retreats where guys get together and have it's a fiber arts weekends, but focused on just guys. Um, and there's events there are classes that are taught by the participants, and some of the people are fairly well known. A lot of people are really good at their niche market. Fantastic lace knitters and people who do double knitting. Alistair Post Quinn, who does extreme double knitting, uh, attends them from time to time, and he offers his classes at the thing, and it's really amazing. So I went to one of the very first one of those on the West Coast in San Francisco, and brought a friend who I had just taught how to knit, and that's kind of where it really took off, because I was around all these other guys who did this, and they were asking questions about things that I could help them with, and I was learning stuff from them, and I wanted to know more, and so that's kind of how it began. So then I moved to San Francisco in 2010 to do HIV testing and outreach and all of that. And while I did that, I also decided I wanted to start designing. So I started designing and publishing patterns, and um, getting into books and magazines, and that's where it took off.
And here you are on the party line.
Yeah, and then here I am.
Here you are. Yeah, and it's exciting to do the first book. Are you thinking you'll do a second one? Because either people love doing it or they hate doing it and swear they'll never do it again.
Oh no, I will do definitely do another. I have two books in progress. I have a collaborative e-collection ebook thing also going on in the works, but all of these things take so much time. I mean, the from concept to the final work, it's years of work. Um, so they're the books that I'm thinking of are all in um, different stages of proposal. So I'm working with some people and tweaking things and knitting swatches and figuring out how I want it to be presented. And eventually it will make its way to a table where they will say yes or no.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's probably the biggest misconception people have about doing knitting books. And I know it was for me when I did my first one, which my niece helped me tremendously with it, with the technical part of it. But it was like, what do you think, 8 to 12 months? It was like, no, it took 3 years. So yeah, there's just so much that goes into doing a knitting book, and let's do a little tour of yours, um, of some projects that I pulled, and of course,
sure.
I always try to pull kind of so people can see there's the assortment of things they can expect to find. Obviously, there are 18 projects in this book, and we're not going to look at all 18 of them today because though people can find them on your designer page and on your website. So, but let's start first with the inspiration for this book.
Yeah, so this book is all inspired by architecture, urban architecture. Um, and what I mean by that when I say that is those buildings that are kind of iconic city buildings, old movie theaters, a lot of government buildings, the ones that feel like they've always been there, that were built with a lot of care and um, a lot of intent in their design. So things that are more well thought out and we might call classic were
Yeah,
the things that were guiding me in the development of this book.
the kind of stuff we don't tear down at this
The
point,
things you don't,
right?
yeah, that you don't want to tear down, or if you do, you tear down around, you know, some of the elements. And those were the things that I was really trying to look at. And in most cases, um, I was looking at sort of a bigger thing, but every once in a while, like on the cover, there the scarf that's there with those arches, that was a grill. So that may, you know, that could possibly disappear off of a building, um, but
Yeah, but hopefully not, because it's
hopefully
yeah,
not.
it's so pretty, and and for me, I'm always drawn to Art Deco or Art Nouveau architecture, and I could see in this book that that catches your imagination as well, and like the shawl that the lady's wearing on the cover, definitely has that sort of 1930s kind of architectural vibe to it. And which to me is one of the great things about color work is that you can capture that kind of detail, more than you can just with stitch patterns. And I really love that design. I think it's so pretty. And I think for people who are really ambitious, doing that in double knitting could really well, first keep your brain seriously engaged,
Yes.
but would also give you like that reverse as well, which could be really cool. In graphics, we
Yeah.
were talking about the guy that does double extreme double knitting. Yeah, that would definitely be you would not be doing that while watching TV.
Yeah, and as I was showing, as he was seeing some of these things, he was commenting like, "That'd be a great pattern for double knitting." And I'm like, "Yeah, it would be."
Yeah.
Um,
And I love
I just,
double knitting. I have videos on the Planet Pearl channel on how to do double knitting, um and like you, I started out thinking, oh well, I'm only going to do chunky yarns on big needles, and I would never do anything in a fine gauge wool,
No,
on
no.
small needles. And yeah, famous last words, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, so for people who are listening going, oh my God, I would never do that in double knitting. Oh, I bet you would. I bet you
Yeah,
would.
one of the main points in this book, I talk about um, the difficulty level of things. So I didn't put in these patterns, and I don't unless a magazine requires it because of their style guide. I don't put beginning or intermediate or advanced on my projects. Instead, I list the skills that are required. So do you know how to cast on? Do you know how to increase or decrease in pattern? Do you know how to do locked floats? If you know how to do, the 5 things that are listed, then you can definitely make this project. I find that students that I'm talking to when I'm teaching, they will say, if something says it's advanced, well, I don't identify as an advanced
Yeah,
knitter.
yeah, I think that's
So
true.
I won't even look at it. So, or if it's a beginning pattern, oh, beginning patterns are much too easy for me. I want something that's more challenging. Well, the
Yeah.
reality is that that pattern might be more engaging than you expect. So instead, I encourage people to look at like what's involved in the project. Do you like the finished thing? And if you do, you can make it. Um, and also, like we say things are hard when really we mean they are going to take time. And um, if we're willing to invest the time in the thing, we can have it.
Yeah,
Anyone can make any of these
and that's
patterns.
such a great idea about listing the skills because, if there's 5 things you need to know how to do and you know how to do 4, then you can always, I mean, the internet is such
Hmm.
a great opportunity to learn new skills. And of course, in knitting, I think you can never know everything, especially
Right.
since there are 3,000 different bind offs. And I mean, if you use them once every 20 years, how are you even going to remember that? Right. But is that you have the opportunity to go learn that 5th skill and then tackle a project that you might not otherwise have done. I think that's a really great idea.
Yeah. And anytime that you can take classes in person,
Um,
at your local yarn shop or at one of the fiber events, that's also a great opportunity, not only for you to learn, but to connect with other people who can be supportive. Because, like when I was learning how to spin, um, my first attempt, I got a wheel and went home and decided I was going to do it, and I immediately got stuck. And it's the kind of thing that I couldn't just learn it by watching a video. I really just had to be around other people who were spinning. And when I moved up and to San Francisco and got my another wheel because I had friends who were spinning, and then oh look, I could do this. So um, since you guys are doing it, I think I could probably do it too. And will you help me out? And they're like, yeah. So then I was able to um, start to spin because it's like um, these little fine adjustments that need to happen, and listening to the wheel, like, how it's talking to you. Well, it doesn't talk to you,
yeah.
but the just like the why is this thing pulling this fiber way too hard? Oh, well, if I adjust this a little bit, it gets better. And that kind of fine tuning is difficult to catch, I think, on video learning. That being said, um,
And
a
people are
lot of
so
things you
collaborative when you go to those stitch events. It's
yeah.
yeah, people are so collaborative, which I gotta get that out of the way. People are so collaborative, and it's interesting because everybody's at different skill levels, and people are so helpful with the people sitting next to them, which
Hmm.
I really love. It's very different than when I was practicing law.
Yeah.
So yeah, so let's take a look at some of the projects in the book, and this is I love this. This kind of like that perfect slouchy soft, comfortable sweater that you're going to really wear until you wear it out.
Out. Yes.
Yeah, you're going to just
The
you'll wear this sweater out. So, tell us
This is
about
Godfrey.
tell us about the
Um,
inspiration.
so Godfrey was from like it's kind of I don't know how easy it is to see, mostly because we use this kettle dyed yarn, but there is a um, sort of a stacked brickwork pattern that this came from, and it's all just knit and purl. Um, so super easy, but it just came from like old brickwork patterns, kind of herringbone looking patterns, um, on a wall in New York. So
And a nice, easy repeat.
yeah, it's really a fairly easy uh, repeat. It's a small chart and just knit and purl, so it's not difficult. And then also with a smaller chart, when it's something like this, once you get it going, you can really read what by looking at your knitting, like
Yeah.
what's supposed to happen. So it's easy to stay on track. The surprise in this one, I guess, is the saddle shoulder. So the lines from the sleeve go all the way up onto the shoulder, which is kind of nice, so it doesn't break off at the
Yeah.
shoulder.
Yeah.
Um,
You
and
definitely
then
just wear the
Madeline.
sweater until it's so old it falls apart.
Hmm. And
Really.
this is Madeline Tosh DK,
Oh,
so it's just really amazing to work with.
yeah. It's gonna be nice in the hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Life's too short to knit with scratchy wool. Yeah. The softer the better. This is a really beautiful pattern, and I know that going by my husband and my son, most men don't like really fussy kind of sweaters, which if you
Hmm.
like color work like I do, can be you know, disappointing. But
Yeah.
but this has like just the right amount of color work in it so that it's not fussy, and I especially like using that pattern on the sleeves kind of to break it up a little bit. Tell us about this
Yeah.
sweater.
So this one is people call these coffin sweaters, where the pattern is just on the front and the back of it is solid. So all of the color work effort is on the front panel.
Yeah, because you
The
don't
sleeves,
back into the room, so you know.
right? Or when you're laying in the coffin, just the only
Yeah,
part that you see
exactly.
is the
Nobody's
front.
gonna
But
see
yeah,
what's behind
coffin.
you.
So yeah, I wanted to do something that had color work, but I wanted it to be a little bit pulled back for guys, because like you said, most guys are not gonna have anything super bold. And even the colors that I chose for this, this is felted tweed, which is one of my favorite yarns ever. It's incredible to work with, and
Oh,
then
this is the Rowan felted tweed.
this is Rowan felted tweed,
Yeah,
and
it's a nice yarn.
it lasts forever. I have a sweater I made in like 2006 or 2000, somewhere around there, 2007, and it's still in great shape, just like it's new. So
Yeah, and it has such a
definitely,
nice feel to it.
yeah. And the sleeves in the back are it's garter rib, so it's a two-row repeat, super easy to do. It's not like stretchy like ribbing. It sort of holds itself out, and it makes a nice thickness of fabric, which is very similar to the the thickness of the color work on the front, because the front is two yarns carried across, and the arms in the back are just one yarn. So I wanted to make sure that the fabric, the weight of the entire piece was uniform. And the way I did that was by creating it using this textured fabric or
Yeah,
textured stitch.
it's really sharp.
Yeah,
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 and this of course that you from what we talked about earlier, you could tell this would be my sweater. This is
yeah.
yeah, and I'm a huge fan of like bracelet length sleeves because A, I like to wear bracelets. And B, I think that the wrist is a really is a very feminine part of a woman's body, that the delicate wrist. It's just, I don't know, it's girly to me. So tell us
Hmm.
about the inspiration for this one.
So this one came from, there's a wall covering, like an old deco-y wall covering. And so I wanted to do something that was a larger chart but was still repeated, using a finer yarn, but not so fine that people wouldn't make it. So this is fingering weight yarn. And we work on, what size needles do we use? I think threes. So it's not completely impossible to do as far as managing the needle and yarn. But it is two charts, and the charts are used. All four charts are used in the back, and they both look the same. well, each chart is used twice, I would rather say, on the back. So it goes like A, B across. And that's what creates the swirly pattern, and it stacks offset from each other. Um, this also uses locked floats, which is not something I created. It's something that Meg Swanson did a book called Armenian Knitting. So Schoolhouse Press has this book, and it's essentially the same technique of securing the unused yarn or the floating yarn along the back. We'll talk about that in a few minutes a little more. What else can I tell you about this? This yarn is Shalimar Breathless. So it's superwash merino, cashmere, and silk.
Oh
So
my gosh.
it's a fantastic yarn. It's hand dyed, and I'll say I was a little concerned about bleeding of the color transferring. So when I did my swatch, I tested it, of course, to make sure that it was fine, and I encourage people to do swatches and tests. Because I mean, imagine if you had done all this work and then put this in water, and then if the dye had bled. So going with a yarn that a company that you know is a good way to make sure that doesn't happen. And then also testing your swatch by washing it, or in the way that you're going to use, the way you're going to wash the final product. So if you're going to use a wool wash of some kind, do your swatch in that same wash.
Yeah. And
Some
for hand
some
dyes, I always take the whole hank and soak
Yes,
it down and like push out the color, and I'll just keep doing it until I get clear water because I'm
yeah,
really just, terrified
yeah.
of
So I did that with this, and I do the same thing. And then once the water is clear, I put some vinegar in the water to help just
set the
ensure that it's
color.
not going to do anything. It wasn't bleeding at all anyway, but I was just OCD about making sure it didn't. Mostly because I didn't have time. And when you're producing a book, everything that's here, 18 designs, all graded, sized in the different sizes it needed to be, all of the text, everything had to be delivered in a 9-month time period.
Ouch.
And I work full time, so and I was teaching, and it's like I do a lot, and so it just meant really good time management, and um, it meant no room really for error.
Yeah, you didn't have time to redo it.
No, I didn't have time.
No, especially
Well,
a project like this. So,
except I kind of did have to. I screwed up the back on this one. So I knit the sample, and I don't know, I think I got the whole back done and part of one of the fronts, and then I realized that I had done the waist shaping. I could have done the waist shaping better. It
uh,
was a different way.
yeah.
So I ripped it out. So I actually knit the back of this twice.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this piece is quite the statement piece. I mean, you walk
Yeah.
into a room wearing this, you will not be fading into the background. Tell me about the inspiration for this piece.
So this one is Savoy, and it is I'm sorry, this is not Savoy. This is Apollo. Um, this was inspired by the old theater facade. So if this is kind of a T, it actually is a T shape. If you flip it upside down and pretend it's all neon, it looks kind of like the marquee of a theater marquee.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, no, I see that.
yeah, so that was where it came from. And what I wanted to do was figure out a way to do a wrap that fit the body, that was a nice length, that was all garter. So this is all garter stitch. And it starts by casting on a whole bunch of stitches across the top. And so the wide brown border that wraps around her to the front is like the first stitches. And after it's knit for a while, then a certain number are cast off, and then you change to the light brown and work until the center. And then you join ball two of the ball two that you'll be using for that, the dark brown, and then you join ball three, which is the second light brown. So you're working with 3 yarns for a while, and then you add the 2 mustardy colors, so then you have 5 yarns, and then you add the 2 more dark brown, so you have 7, and then until you're working all the way across with the light blue, and there's 9. You're working with 9 balls of yarn at once. for a short period of time, and then it goes back down to one. So, but it's all just garter stitch and all intarsia, so just wrapping the yarns. Um, and it is something that when it's out, when I bring it to a show or bring it to a class to show people, they fight over it. And it looks amazing on everyone, like all body types. It looks really good on, which is, I was
Yeah.
kind of surprised at how good it works for everyone. So it's that long vertical line, and there's no like, it doesn't matter if you're a bigger person or really small, as long as you're tall enough that it doesn't drag on the ground, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's really stunning. And I mean, and I can see all kinds of crazy color combinations that would, I mean, work really, really well for this. I mean, you could do it in, black and white and gray, or you could do it with black and white and red. I mean, there's all tones of, cream and white and tan. I mean, that it's just one of those pieces where really it's whatever kind of crazy color palette you want to come up with, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
The
really.
only thing, the only thing I wouldn't do are striping yarns.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
I think it
the
would be
closest I would do is
compete.
petal. Mostly, yeah, mostly because of the way that the piece is done. It's worked really. There's a really wide band of something where it would be one kind of repeat, and then it's going to change to this very short one. So there would be a little, I think, distracting. But
Yeah.
someone might do it, and I might be really surprised. I mean, who knows? Maybe it would be great.
Yeah, because I can see then you end up kind of with stripes going both directions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be pretty busy that way, but yeah, it's just, I mean, quite the statement piece. Oh, and here's a closer look at the shawl that we from the front cover. And it's nice because this is that float locking technique, right? Where
Yes.
you can
This
see
is
it on the back. So you get a nice, neat, and tidy back of the color work project, which when I do color work, I'm a maniac about my floats. And I know, typically they tell you in Fair Isle or stranded color work, no more than 5. I never go more than 3 because I cannot stand loose floats on the back
hmm
of my color work, even though I'm the only one who's going to see them. It drives
hmm
me crazy, but I'm a little obsessive compulsive. But I mean, it really does create a nice tidy back of the project so that you're really not embarrassed for people to see it.
Yeah. No, you become really quite proud of both sides of the work, which is really cool. So when you're doing a piece like this, it becomes almost it's like a step closer to couture
Yeah.
work. It takes a little bit more time, but it does a lot of things. One of the things it does is it takes away that worry about tension for floats because there's no big floating yarn on the back. The other thing that it does is it takes away most of the color dominance, like where one color can appear more dominant than the other, because the dominance is connected directly to um, that floating yarn in the back. So there's one of the yarns that's not being used, that's being carried along the back, has no tension on it. It's just floating, which means the stitch to the right and left of it are able to be a little bit bigger. They can stick out a little bit more than the yarn that's being used all the way across. So the the dominant or less dominant yarn, that whole thing, when it's done like this, or every stitch even, um, it kind of goes away, which is kind of
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and
It also,
then you have to then you're less concerned about catching like your fingernails as you put your arms through the
no,
sleeves and
yeah, there's none
or
of that.
you
So
had
baby
if you've got rings
blankets,
on. Yeah.
rings and stuff like are less likely to get caught. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Um, with this. This one is done, I think there are 6 charts. So we broke up, this is one large chart. I drew it by hand and then transcribed it into the digital format for the book. Well, actually, the graphics people did. Um, but it appears symmetrical, but if you really stop and really look at it, it's not symmetrical. So, and I was determined to make that be the case. I didn't want to do like half the chart, half of the thing, and then just say, oh, just reverse it for the other half. I wanted it to not be identical all the way across. Um, and it was a success. So lots of people are liking this.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
People are casting it on. I had them cast on 400 and whatever stitches to go across and work back and forth. And some people have turned it on its side and they're working it the short way. We have yet to see what that looks like done, but I'm sure it'll be beautiful. One person's doing it out of hand spun, which I think is really fantastic. Um, so, yeah, this was the top over a doorway of an old building in LA. So it's a carved stone facade that I took and went crazy with.
Yeah, it's very dimensional. The design is very dimensional. It's really pretty.
Yeah,
Really
that's what
pretty.
that is.
And then for people who want smaller projects, this is great for gifting. And one of the things I love about color work is that, especially if you're giving a gift to someone who doesn't knit, they think you must be a freaking genius to like figure
Hmm.
figure out how to do more than one color. And I think this is also such a great use of a self-striping yarn with a solid and to create even more color dimension. And I thought this hat was just beautiful. Tell us about the inspiration for this one.
This one, gosh, I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was just a graphic that I had found that was a stylized fountain. So I started playing with that and the constraints of what I could, how much space I had to do this hat. And so I did that, and then realized that I really wanted the fountain to be contained somehow. So I did a turned brim, and I wanted to do a two-color brim, so I did, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, so this one is cast on just with one color, and then we're doing a two-color rib for a while, and then there's a pearl round, which is what turns the brim. And then I stopped using the second color, and just in the main color, this sort of buttery color, is a regular rib on the underside of this two-color rib.
Oh,
And
so
the
it holds
reason
your head nice and snugly.
exactly because two-color rib doesn't really
It's not
pull
very
in at all.
snugly. No.
So I've hidden sort of the thing that's going to help keep the hat on the head, which is nice. And then just before the end of the two-color ribbing, you start the color work and then off you go. So that's the little secret to the town square hats. And once I finished this one, I realized there was so much extra yarn. This yarn is Blue Moon Fiber Arts. It's Socks That Rock Lightweight in two different colors. And she gives like 400 and something yards
Wow.
in each skein. So it doesn't take that much to make a hat. You might even be able to make three, I don't know, but I did two. So I did a second hat using all the same instructions, just a different chart. And I think your next slide is going to be that hat. Yeah, so there's the second one.
Oh my
So
gosh. So if you buy one skein of each, you're going to make this hat and this hat
yeah, or you could make two of the
of the
same
same
pattern if
hat.
you like one or the other. You could probably do them both in the same color order if you wanted to make identical hats, but I liked being able to switch it up and show how different it might look.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. And a very cost-effective holiday knit for gifting.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
then when you're done, I mean, there's extra yarn left over. You could always just do a striped hat or something.
Yeah.
There's, with all your scraps.
Yeah, a pair of fingerless mitts, something else.
Or bits, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, very pretty. And then I love mittens. I don't know why, because I live in Florida. Maybe that's why I love mittens because we don't really wear them here. But I love this kind of broken chevron pattern on here. I thought it was so pretty. Tell us about this inspiration for this design.
So Ellington, trying to think what even was. I don't remember what that inspiration was on this one.
Well,
How's
they
that for
turned out pretty regardless. This is really
uh,
Lovely. And this too is a self-striping yarn mixed with um, more of a tonal and a solid.
And like a kettle, yeah. So it's three different. This is alpaca socks from Classic Elite
Oh,
is
soft.
the yarn. So it is alpaca, merino, and nylon.
Yeah.
Uh,
Stretchy
so
and
again, yeah, did the two color rib again, and just working in the round using two colors at a time. So this would be a good opportunity. Also, you could use scrap yarn and change up the yarns or whatever. I chose to just use three because I didn't want to be completely crazy with the cost. But you could make a whole bunch of pairs of these too using the same couple skeins of yarn just by alternating your.
yeah, and I think sock knitters have lots of partial skeins stashed away, and
Right?
I don't know what it is. I don't knit socks very often, but I've never actually used an entire skein of sock yarn when I've knit a pair of socks. So, um, yeah, I mean, so this is a great way, especially with this design, is you could, I mean, you could, if you wanted to, make every one of those repeats in a
In a different color, yeah.
different color. So as long as you're using the same weight, but yeah, these are really cute. So well, thank you for the tour of the book. I really appreciate it, and it's so beautiful, and they did such a nice job styling it as well. I think it really highlighted highlighted the designs in the book. So, but you know, Innery does that. They do gorgeous books. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I know people are going to want to be able to follow, not, you know, not physically follow you, but to digitally follow you and see what's going on next. And so people can go to kylewilliam.com, and you can also see where Kyle is teaching, if you'd like to attend a workshop. And also he has his own, you can see he's got patterns where you can see the more patterns from the book, which we did not talk about today, but also um, some really nice things for your home, and as well as for your body. And then also, Kyle, you're really involved in this Halos of Hope, which we wanted to talk about today. So, tell me about this project.
So Halos of Hope is a nonprofit um, that they provide hats for people who are dealing with cancer. So they send them to oncology offices and end up going to cancer patients all over the country. And I am the Northern California ambassador for Halos of Hope. And on my website, there's to learn about like what kinds of, and it says it actually on the Halos website, but what kinds of yarns are best for chemo hats, and where you can send the hats to. And people send me hats that they've made, either knit or crochet or whatever, and I distribute them to the centers in my part of the state. And through the different ambassadors that there are, the different people who help, we're able to do, I think we serve about 350 centers in the US.
Wow.
And we deliver hats, every month. Hats are being delivered to different places. So my next big event, as far as with Halos, will be tentatively it will be at Stitches West, which is in Santa Clara, California. So we'll have a booth there, and we'll do hat drive and ask people to make and deliver hats that we can give to people who are going through chemo.
Yeah, what a great cause. And you know, knitters are generous people, so it's a great cause. So, and then the Center for Knit and Crochet, which I had not heard of. I was really excited when I was reading about this project, and the especially when I was reading about the World War II knitting thing, because one of my favorite museums in the entire country is the Smithsonian's World War II Museum in New Orleans, which is like totally interactive, and you know, and when you look at kind of the history of that knitting has played in this country, it's really I mean, it's really fascinating. And so tell us about the Center for Knit and Crochet.
Sure. So, Center for Knit and Crochet started in 2012, and the goal is to sort of preserve and promote all of the things about the fiber arts, the knit and crochet fiber arts. One of the most, I would say, ambitious things that we're doing right now is working on a nomenclature, which is like the language that we use to describe our work. Um, so we are partnering with a lot of other people, and it's a very involved process to figure out um, what words we use to describe the things that we do to make the work, like the directions or even um, the nomenclature, the words that are used. Um, the the woman who started this is also the one who started the Craft Yarn Council, which are the people who came up with the standards for yarn weights and body standards and all of that. So that's the kind of uh, pedigree that it comes from. Um, and then from there, another one of the things that we're really wanting to do is use our collective knowledge as crafters to help museums, for example, with their collections, understand what it is that they have. So a lot of times we'll go to, like you were talking about, the the World War II museum. You may go to something that's clearly crocheted, and it might say knitted hat,
Yeah.
and you're looking at it going, no, that's actually crochet.
Yes, I can
Um,
tell the
and
difference.
yeah, and someone who might know even better might say, oh, that's crochet, that's Irish lace, that's, the pattern is most likely from this area that came from whatever, like, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
So, in order to help our museums be more specific about the work that they have, um, we're going to be developing a way to help. Hopefully, well, I'm saying that like I know that that's exactly what we're doing, but I believe that's what we're doing. We're working towards developing a way so that everyone can get it, use their knowledge to help make the exhibits more accurate. Wasn't
Which
very
is a good
eloquent.
thing, because you know what, it's so funny because whenever I find something posted, I mean, knitters and crocheters go nuts when it's misidentified.
Hmm.
It's like, how can they not tell that's crocheted and not knitted, kind of thing? Or how can they not tell that that is somebody with a crochet hook, that's
Yeah.
not knitting? It's actually pretty funny. And yeah, and I know like in the Outlander TV series, there people went nuts because they were showing a basket of yarn, and this would have been like hand spun yarn from the 18th century, and it was in clearly machine made, you know, schemes. And
Yeah.
people were like, there was a picture of it on Facebook, and people were going nuts, So, yes, we do like our craft to be properly identified and historically accurate. So,
Yeah. So
yeah,
anyone who is interested in joining, they can go to the Center for Knit and Crochet's website. It's a very small fee to join and become a part of it. Um, we're going to be at Vogue Knitting Live in Minneapolis coming up. I believe we're also going to be in New York City in January. So you'll be able to talk to people there and at the booth and learn more about CKC and what we are doing.
Oh, good
So,
point. People will be looking out for that. And then also, Kyle has a Ravelry designer page for people who are on Ravelry, and you can see his individual patterns as well as you'll see more of the projects from the book. So you
mhm.
can check all those out as well. And then you can also follow Kyle on Instagram and see what he's up to and what inspires him. And
And my kitty, there's my kitty.
and your
That's
kitty,
Willow.
and your
Willow,
kitty, of course.
she's a three-legged rescue cat. So yeah, you'll end up seeing a lot of her if you're on my Instagram.
Yes, she's very cute. And then you can also check out Kyle's YouTube channels where here's an example of the video with the locking floats. So so if you're going to make that great shawl, then you can check the technique in motion as opposed to in drawings, which is I find helpful. And of course, we're always going to encourage you to buy your books at your local yarn store because we want to keep them in business. It makes me cry when people send me emails that say take this yarn store out of your yarn shop directory. They've closed. So it's always a sad day. So we do what we can to keep them in business. So if your yarn shop isn't going to carry the book, of course you can come over to Planet Pearl, click on books. You'll see Kyle's book right here, and then you can help support Planet Pearl. So at least you're going to help somebody when you buy the book, which is a good thing. And then
Yeah.
if you come back to Planet Pearl's Facebook page starting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, in the morning, you'll have an opportunity to win a copy of Urban Knit Collection for your very own. So you don't want to miss that opportunity to win a copy because if there's one thing we knitters love, it's free knitting stuff. So,
Yes.
right? It's an opportunity to get free knitting stuff. We love free knitting stuff. Um, so thanks so much, Kyle, for joining me today on the party line. And I hope you'll come back and talk about your next book because it sounds like you got lots in the works.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, terrific. Well, thank you for joining me, and everybody have a great knitting day.